won't you listen to this woman, my dear mentor, my dear friend, my light catcher. Please welcome Laure-Anne Bosselaar to the stage.
Thank you, Nickole. Thank you, Nickole. My eyes aren't red. It's just an illusion you have. I was crying my eyes out there. Where? Miles, Mimi, Susan, Jennifer, Lily, my star, my intern, my most generous and talented workshop participants, the truly supportive, the truly supportive, kind faculty. This festival was so full of supportive and kind faculty. And you all, having braved the rain to come to the last reading, us three, we thank you so, so much for them. I love you, Miles. I love you this much. This is a brand new book. I found it here in a box. It was sent here directly. And in the book, I dedicated a poem to Miles and Mimi. And the poem is called While There Is Still Time, for Miles and Mimi Kuhn. While there is still time, let me waste it. Take it outside and do nothing but sit with it under the old vine's nave and its chaotic choir of sparrows. It's one of those days when nothing gets done. My head a constant whinge of worries. But a breeze drifts in from the east, and inside it the distant peal of church bells. Then, from the past, a shiver. A line from Apollinaire. À la fin, tu es là de ce monde ancien. You're tired finally of this ancient world. I had forgotten that line for so long, and here, 6,000 miles away from Paris, 6,000 miles from a room in Antwerp where I memorized his poems by heart, I heard myself say it aloud to a dusty congregation of sparrows. Some poems will never leave me. They are my other mother tongue. Their scansion the beat in my wrists and throat. But these sparrows, how easily they come and go from gnarled darkness into the bright noon light, and how, if there is no water, they'll bathe in dust. I watched a woman once on a subway platform grab her screaming child's wrist, twist it, and shake her, pointing to a cat-sized rat chewing at something between the rails. Stop it, or I'll throw you to that rat. That woman, she seemed so defeated, so beat. And that child, her terror as she wrapped herself around her mother's legs and said, I stop, Mama, I stop. I recognized that terror. My whole body was a gasp. It was a station of my childhood, there, not 3 feet away, as the train screeched out of the tunnel. I didn't board it. I joined the crowd toward the exit and its urban dispersal. All of us strangers, worn, torn, mute, blinded by New York's noon, its chaos and roar, brief companions in a scattering flock. The sparrows haven't stopped their commute. And again, it's Apollinaire, I remember. You almost died of sorrow then, a Lazarus bewildered by light. And as the birds bathe in their fonts of dust and sun, I remember another line. Un instant voile tout de son ardente cendre. An instant veils everything with its ardent ash. But I can't remember what came after that line or before. It doesn't matter. There's such perfect unimportance here. My memory so generous and untangling lines and languages as I sit by a vine. So I waste my time and take my time to do so. If you were at Jessica's reading, oh my, this afternoon, right? If you were at Nickole's reading, the animal poems, right? So I dedicated a poem to Jessica and Nickole, and here it is. The Night Garden. Because everything you learned from the stained glass windows you knelt under still remains thorned and stained and torn. And all the teachings you were expected to believe still leave you disbelieving. And you wish it were not so. And because one sparrow's chirp can pour gratitude into you like drought dazzling rain, and you'd much rather kneel for that, and you do, there's something appeased in the way you get up again and brush the dirt from your knees, that modest dirt that belongs to no one and is yours so entirely in this small lot, my garden, hedged, hidden with its offerings of fruit and shade and song. So that later, when evening fog embraces all you just praised, you slip back into the night garden to be blessed that way too. I'm going to read a poem that I read here, I think 2 years ago. Or was it 3? 2 years ago, I think. It's a poem in many sections, and I'm not going to tell you how many, because then you start counting. And then you say, okay, 5 more, 4 more. But I'll stop slightly between the sections. And it's I don't have to tell you, I think you'll. The section, the whole poem, is called Rooms Remembered. I needed for months after he died to remember our rooms. Some lit by the trivial, others gentle with an obscurity that comforted us. It hid our own darkness. So for months, duteous, I remembered. Rooms where friends lingered, rooms with our beds, with our books, rooms with curtains I sewed from bright cottons, tables of laughter, a chipped bowl in early light, black branches by a window bowing toward night, and those rooms too in which we came together to be away from all. And sometimes from ourselves also. I remember that. But tonight, as I lean into the doorway to his room and stare at dusk settled there, what I remember best is how to throw my arms around his neck I needed to stand on the tips of my toes. This longing for him, the choke in my throat again. Enough, enough. I throw a coat over my shoulders, close the door behind me softly, as if afraid to wake another ache. Another dawn. It'll seep into the sky behind the palms, Fists in my pockets, I head east into this street of bungalows, as if I belonged here, among the 100 windows that light one by one, among the first joggers and their dogs, past garages yawning out cars into the noisy busyness of day. This longing again for him who that June did not wait for light, turned his face away from the windows and quietly entered silence. I heard how silence swallowed his last breath and followed him inside the silence after that. Arroyo Burro Beach. The tide dies a while, then starts its way up again and up again. Fog rolls in, dense and sudden. Behind me, there's a rock, halfway to the end of the bay, hunched, split in two, black and blue, with mussels. And that's where I turn around and walk back each day. A restlessness swells inside the tides there, and it's there each time, just before I can look away. Then everything drowns into itself again and into gray. I no longer pick up shells. I let them be. Waves rake them back and place them at my feet again anyway. Small skeletons, dead, but pretty. Look at me, riding circles around what I must face. The man I love is dead. The ashes he asked that I lose to this ocean are still in our room in a red box he gave me for some birthday in New York. His dust. I'll keep it a while longer. I'll keep it as one secretly keeps something for oneself, and won't, today at least, lose more of him to these waves. Clouds heave over the mountains, rip and rain at last. Years of drought, yet spring drenches everything with jasmine stars and citrus blooms. The hummingbirds are drunk all night, that mockingbird, each dawn the call and call of crows. I have been his widow now 5 years. At first, no tears. Everything I was told would happen as I mourned didn't. No sobs, no rage, no stage 1, 2, 3, no welcome dreams in which he'd appear. His cat mourned better than I, lying on her side for weeks across his room's threshold, stretched as much as she could, back paws against one side of the door jamb and front paws to the other. She waited for him. I paced the house, the streets, no tears. I cleaned and sewed and raked and wrote, sat in the jacaranda's shade as its shadow soaked the orchard. I walked the beach, stooped for stones, how they'd huddle in my palm. A white one tarred black, the one like a fist, and another one with a hole bored straight through its center. I threw them back. The metaphor's too blatant. Nights I'd walk from the kitchen to the orchard and measure it, 1 foot in front of the other, head bent, toes to heel, heels to toes, whispering numbers, 34 feet wide, 33 feet deep. And still, no tears. There was a room in Antwerp I loved so much that I never filled it with books, a bed, or a table. It was alive with its own clarity. And I feared that anything I would leave there would etch shadows in that radiance. The room was in the attic of a 100-year-old house, hunched under a mansard roof. All its windows faced the sky. No horizon, no walls, no other windows stared into mine. The wide planked floor had been painted over for more than a century. Scratches in the floor revealed other colors under its white surface. A deep scuff showed a reddish gray. Another scratch was yellow, green, or black. The sun splashed into that room at noon, cascades of light. Dust sucked upward by the heat fluttered under the skylight's chicken wire glass. I'd stretch out my palms into the rays then and grab that light, lie on my back and listen through the layers of whirling air to the city's guttural chatter, the clang of tramways and the melancholic calls of tall ships with their crowns of shrieking gulls. I owned that light. It was alive in my hands. So, how are you? Friends ask. All kindness and concern, heads cocked, eyes locked in mine. And just like that, I'm his again. His wife, his widow, the one whose name was hyphenated to his. And I'm oddly happy to speak about myself, coupled to him again. Better, I say. I'm okay, I'm better. But won't say his name out loud yet, because I know it would throw a shadow over the conversation, all kindness and concern, and over him also, who no longer had a shadow. The empty room I loved led to a larger one where I lived. On the floor by my bed, askew on a stack of books, stood my small transistor radio. It caught 3 stations. One was a pirate radio broadcasting from a ship in the North Sea. The other, with Flemish news, only came on 2 hours each night. And the one I listened to most was a classical music station. It played uninterrupted for an hour or more. Then, after a minute of absolute silence, a woman's weary voice. Oh, she must have been in her late 80s and constantly stumbled on musicians' names. I can still hear her say, Rachmaninoff. Every hour, Our Lady's Cathedral chimed a while. Then the treble bell rang the hour. I'd stand on a chair, lean through a dormer window to watch how Our Lady's steeple pierced the light. Summer of 63, I was 20. I fell wholly and forever in love every week. I was hungry for life and satiated by it, reading deep into the night and copied Sartre, de Beauvoir, Apollinaire, Gide, Rilke, Baudelaire, Senghor, Goethe, Rimbaud, and Lorca in my notebooks, barely sleeping before I rushed down to work, then ran back up those 5 steep flights to that white, lit room. I was 20 then. And remember how in stores, tramways, or cafes, I would catch someone's gaze, eyes that would take me in and held me there for a moment. The glint of those stares were a flash of mica, offered to me just like that. And my loneliness shattered. Everything was light. Those eyes, that gaze. And then just as sudden, I disappeared again inside the dismissal of a blink. I'd search again and again for other eyes, other heart-gasping moments, an other gaze to hold me, take me, hold me in. And it didn't matter how briefly, as long as I was held. And yet, with him, from across a crowd, table or pillow, when his gaze took me in, it was I who looked away first. Oh, it was I. Some nights settled against him, my face in his neck. I missed him, feeling that he was elsewhere. I bought a new bed after he died, his imprint in ours unbearable now that he was nowhere. How can I say this, if not in the simplest way? Often I loved to listen to his sleeves shush on our table. Some evenings, he would hide his face in his hands for just a few seconds, then let go of his held breath, lift his head again, his eyes bereaved of light. What room, face, gaze haunted him? And where you are, friends, in Kansas or Utah, Rhode Island or Tennessee, what haunts you? What is it you choke inside your palms? Have you told someone? Will you? I had weeded, hemmed, counted, raked, cleaned. I had written myself reminders. I needed to wash the curtains. I had a knot of thistles in my throat. I couldn't swallow. Swallow, swallow, I'd say aloud. I was asleep when he died. I did not wake when he died. I stood in his orchard, heard the wind stuff night into the tree. I thought of his clothes. I had stuffed them in a plastic bag and vacuumed the air out of it. I had sucked his air out of his clothes. I walked to Las Positas, to Peregrina Street, to Pueblo, from Pueblo to Stanley, back to Las Positos. I remembered to wash the curtains. I remembered to feed the cat. I was asleep when he died. I did not wake when he died. I broke the brown bowl that he loved. I had filled it with water for the birds. 4 years of drought, and the birds were dying. The hills, too. No clouds. California was burning. I turned off the radio hearing this. I squeezed my thumbs in my fists. I was asleep when he died. I had to go. I had to leave. I couldn't remember for what. I couldn't remember for where. I drove north on the 101 in the dark to Refugio Beach. I listened to Dylan. She left with the man with a long black coat. I made a U-turn. I did not wake when he died. The mountains are filled with lost sheep. I counted the cars I passed, 52 plus 17 trucks and 1 bus. I drove past our house to Stella's Cafe. We loved to go there. He loved to go there. Happy hour. He and I loved to walk there. He and I. We'd then welcome in the cafe's parking lot the tears. Horse hooves, Flemish jabber, and tugboat hoots ruffle the air. A Sunday in summer. The skylight is open and so are the windows. The transistor crackles a piano piece. I sit in that lit room by the door, my back to the white brick wall. And layer by layer, I peel away the floor paint in a corner of the threshold. Paint petals in my palms. 100 years of lives, 100 keys to this door, 1,000 kisses under that chicken wire skylight, a century of slammed doors, of babies' cries, women, men, couples moving in, choosing a color for the floor, moving out, leaving scuffs and scars behind. The color gray was for a stevedore I knew, who read the North Sea clouds better than God, but couldn't read or write. The blue was for a boy thumbing his marbles in the grooves between the planks. Green was for the lovers who rushed upstairs laughing, breathless, then walked back down so silently. But that black paint, the black for the Sirens of May, 1940, Hitler's Blitzkrieg, blanket bombing Antwerp, his Luftwaffe ordered to avoid Our Lady by all means. Hitler loved Our Lady of Pity. He wanted her for his Reich. Then this thin layer, a dusty yellow, for the Jews. It can only be for the Jews, for their yellow armbands under black stars of David, for the Jews that were cattled to the Bliumis-Dunn transit camp, sorted, separated, beaten, starved, and shot in Bliumis-Dunn, only 14 miles away from my white and lit room. Dusk at the end of the old stone pier. Pelicans dive deep into the waves as we had into each other. I stand here remembering that, but I can't remember his body's weight on me. The man I knew by body and skin and belly and heart, I have so soon forgotten his weight on me. Then you stop weeping. Lift your face from your hands, not because you're done or because it helped, but because there's a faint knock at the window. You look up. It's a branch. It taps and waves and distracts your sorrow. You wipe your face hard with both hands. This is not a sign. You're ruefully aware of that and don't believe in signs. They announced a storm. It nears. That's all. Yet the sky is so still, so lit. Again, those knocks at the window. It's not him. Of course it's not. For weeks now, no thistles in my throat. I clean and count and sew and write and rake. I walk the ocean's hem and hum a little. I pick up stones, bring them home, one tarred black, one with a hole in its center. I sit by the jacaranda, hold the stones in my lap. It's cold. I'm cold. It's late. The sun fades. But just before it turns its back to me, it wraps a ray around my shoulders, finds my hands, and warms them. Weighted, worn, old, open, and lit. Thank you.